The lights were bright in the charity event hall, and people had come from all over the city to watch some lighthearted entertainment and donate for a good cause. Among the many celebrities attending was Keanu Reeves, quiet, polite, and always humble. He had come to support the fundraiser for children's hospitals. He didn't come for drama, he didn't expect to be part of the main show. But someone else had other plans. Jackson. The Crusher, Cole, was a professional MMA fighter. Big, loud, full of muscles, and even more full of pride. He was undefeated in 27 straight matches, and known for destroying his opponents quickly. He had been invited to do a light sparring demonstration, but Jackson was bored. He wanted something more, something that would get the internet talking. When Jackson saw Keanu in the crowd, he smiled, not a kind smile, but the kind a bully wears when he sees someone he thinks is weaker. Jackson pointed at Keanu and laughed. "Hey, movie man," he shouted. "Want to show us your kung fu?" Some people chuckled nervously, others looked confused. Keanu just gave a polite smile and nodded slightly. Jackson didn't stop. He kept going, stepping closer. "Come on, Mr. Matrix. Let's see. What you got, or are you scared?" Again, people laughed, some thinking it was a joke, others starting to get uncomfortable. Keanu stood calmly, not saying anything, just watching Jackson with peaceful eyes. He wasn't angry, he wasn't scared, but he also wasn't going to run away. The event organizer rushed over, whispering to both of them, trying to stop whatever was about to happen. "It's just a charity event," he said. "We don't want real violence." But Jackson raised his hands like a showman and shouted into the mic, "Let the people decide. Should we give them a real fight or not?" The crowd cheered, not because they wanted a fight, but because the energy was rising, and people always cheer when something unexpected happens. Keanu finally stepped forward and spoke, his voice calm and soft. "If this is for charity and if no one gets hurt, then let's keep it respectful." Jackson laughed loudly. "Respectful? You won't be standing long enough to worry about respect." Within minutes, mats were brought in and a space was cleared. It wasn't a professional ring, but it was enough. Phones were up, live streams began, and in less than 10 minutes, the whole world knew what was happening. Clips were already going viral. The hashtags Keanu vs. Crusher and 28-second fight hadn't even been created yet, but something was building. Keanu stood barefoot on the mat, wearing loose black workout pants and a plain t-shirt. No logos, no gloves, just quiet focus. Jackson bounced up and down, warming up, flexing his arms and laughing in front of the cameras. "Say goodbye, action hero," he sneered. But Keanu didn't say anything back. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a breath, and let everything else fade away. He wasn't there to show off. He wasn't there to prove anything. He was just going to do what he knew best. Stay calm, stay in control, and stay true to himself. The bell rang. Not an official bell. Just a loud shout from one of the staff, but it was enough. Jackson charged immediately like a bull, his feet stomping the floor, his fists swinging wild and hard. He wanted to crush Keanu with one punch, end the fight before it could even begin. He thought it would be easy, but something strange happened. Keanu moved, but not like an actor. He moved like water, like someone who had practiced these movements 1,000 times. He stepped aside, let Jackson's punch miss completely, then turned. Eyes focused like a warrior, not a movie star. Jackson spun, surprised, and threw a kick. Keanu caught it gently, twisted, and used Jackson's own weight to take him down. It was fast, smooth, and controlled. Before Jackson even knew what was happening, Keanu dropped low, shifted position, and struck once. Clean and sharp, not in anger, but with precision. Jackson fell flat to the mat, silent. 28 seconds had passed. The room was frozen. People stared, unsure if it was real. Was Jackson acting? Was this a stunt? But no, the MMA champion wasn't. Moving, the crowd went completely silent for 5 long seconds. There was no sound. Then a few people gasped. Someone shouted, "Is he okay?" Keanu knelt down beside Jackson, checked his breathing, and gently tapped his face. Jackson groaned, slowly coming back to consciousness. He looked up at Keanu, confused and embarrassed. But Keanu wasn't laughing. He was helping him sit up, whispering something only the two of them could hear. Then Keanu stood up and helped Jackson to his feet. The referee, stunned but respectful, slowly raised Keanu's hand. The room erupted in applause, not for the knockout, but for the dignity, the calm, and the kindness. Keanu didn't celebrate. He just gave a respectful bow to the crowd and walked away quietly. Jackson stood in place, still dizzy, still trying to understand what had happened, in less than 30 seconds. His ego had been knocked out cold, and the world had just witnessed the start of a story that no one would forget. The moment Keanu helped Jackson stand was shared all over the internet within minutes. People couldn't believe what they had just seen. A Hollywood actor, calm and silent, had knocked out a professional MMA champion in less than 30 seconds. And instead of celebrating, he helped the man he defeated. Clips from the charity event went viral fast. One video alone crossed 5 million views in just 2 hours. Fans across the world were sharing it with the same shocked message. Is this real? Some thought it was a movie stunt. Others said it must be fake. But those who had been there, who saw it live, knew it was real. The hashtag #Keanu28seconds started trending worldwide. People were replaying the video in slow motion, trying to understand how Keanu had done it, how a calm, soft-spoken actor had taken down a trained fighter with such ease. Many MMA fans rushed to defend Jackson, saying maybe he wasn't ready, maybe he slipped. But the footage didn't lie. Keanu moved, like someone who had trained for years, and he didn't show off, not even once. People began digging into Keanu's background. They found out he had trained in judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and other martial arts for over a decade, not just for movies like John Wick, but as part of his real-life. Old interviews started resurfacing where he had talked about training 6 days a week, quietly and without showing off on social media. A well-known martial arts coach tweeted, "That wasn't movie fighting, that was control, timing, and real respect. Keanu's the real deal." That tweet alone got over 100,000 likes. Meanwhile, Jackson was silent. He hadn't posted, hadn't spoken, and hadn't answered calls from sports reporters. Many wondered if he was embarrassed, angry, or hurt. Some mocked him online, calling him names. Others said Keanu humiliated him on purpose. But the truth was, Keanu didn't humiliate anyone. He simply accepted a challenge and responded with skill, not ego. Keanu, on the other hand, continued with his regular day. He didn't post about the event. He didn't brag. He just quietly thanked the organizers and made a donation to the Children's Hospital, even after millions of people were now talking about him. He remained silent. That silence made people love him even more. News channels started covering the story with big headlines. Keanu shocks MMA world. Actor or fighter? Keanu shows what real training looks like. Talk shows invited fighters, actors, and coaches to discuss what happened. And everywhere one thing kept coming up. Keanu's kindness after the fight. One clip that got millions of views showed Keanu checking Jackson's pulse, lifting his head gently and whispering something while the cameras zoomed in. Nobody could hear what he said, but his calm expression showed that he didn't see Jackson as an enemy, just another person. A little girl who was in the audience that day posted her own video too. He didn't hit hard, he moved soft, he waited, then he helped. She said with wide eyes. Her video went viral too. People began calling the moment not just a fight but a lesson. Celebrities began to speak up. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson tweeted, "Keanu is the nicest guy in the world, and apparently also the most dangerous in 28 seconds." Even retired UFC champions commented. Many said they had seen few fighters move with such calm and clarity under pressure. But the biggest question people had was, what would Jackson say? 3 days passed and Jackson remained completely quiet. The internet waited. Some fans defended him, saying he was probably ashamed. Others said he was planning a comeback video, something dramatic to save face. But no one expected what happened next. A simple black and white video popped up on Jackson's official social media account. No music, no flashing graphics, just Jackson sitting alone on a bench. He looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept well in days. His face still had a bruise near the cheekbone, and he didn't smile. He looked into the camera and said, 3 days ago, I got knocked out in 28 seconds. He paused, swallowed, and continued. And I deserved it. The video stunned everyone. Jackson admitted he was wrong. He said he challenged Keanu to prove something, to feed his ego, to show the world that actors can't fight. But he was wrong, completely wrong. And the worst part, he said, wasn't the knockout. It was the way Keanu treated him afterward. He could have laughed. He could have walked away like a king. But he helped me. He showed me respect after I showed him none. Jackson's voice cracked slightly. That hurt more than the punch. He ended the video with one last line. Keanu, if you're watching this, thank you for teaching me something I couldn't learn in the cage. That video changed everything again. The internet that once mocked Jackson now applauded his honesty. Fans who had been angry now offered support. And the story grew bigger. Not just about a fight, but about two men. One who stayed humble in victory, and one who learned how to be humble in defeat. And though people kept asking for interviews, both Keanu and Jackson stayed quiet again, letting the moment speak for itself. But behind the scenes, something even more surprising was happening. Jackson was about to take the biggest step of his life, and Keanu, he was about to say yes to something no one saw coming. After Jackson posted his video, the world finally saw a different side of him. He was no longer the loud and proud fighter who mocked Keanu on stage. He was now someone who had been humbled in front of millions, and instead of hiding, he chose to speak with honesty. That simple video touched people. It was real, raw, and brave. But the biggest surprise came just 2 days later, when Jackson made another post. This time, it was just 4 words written in plain text. Can I train with you? He tagged Keanu in it. No hashtags, no flashy photos. Just a request that shocked everyone. Fans didn't know how Keanu would respond. Some said he would ignore it. Others hoped he would say yes. Deep down, most people wanted to see them meet. Again, but this time not as enemies. Keanu didn't reply right away. True to his style, he stayed silent for almost 24 hours during that time. Thousands of comments appeared. People begged Keanu to accept. Some even joked that Jackson had just made the best life decision of his career. And then, without warning, Keanu's team posted a short video clip. In the clip, Keanu was sitting on a bench in a dojo, barefoot, wearing a simple white training gi. He looked into the camera and smiled softly. I believe in second chances, he said quietly. And I believe in learning. If you're serious, Jackson, come train. He gave a respectful bow at the end of the video. And that was it. The internet exploded. The clip went viral even faster than the fight had. People loved Keanu even more now, not just for his calmness or skill, but for his kindness, forgiveness, and willingness to teach someone who once tried to humiliate him. Jackson replied almost immediately. I'll be there, he wrote, with a photo of his packed gym bag. 3 days later, cameras caught Jackson, walking into the same dojo where Keanu trained. There were no big crowds, no press, just a quiet moment between two men. Jackson bowed at the door, walked in slowly, and when Keanu saw him, he smiled and stood up. There was no tension, no awkwardness. Keanu simply opened his arms and gave Jackson a hug. The cameras stayed at a distance, respecting the moment. They began training that day, not with punches or kicks, but with quiet movements, stretches, breathing, and discipline. Keanu showed Jackson how to slow down, how to control the energy inside him, how to focus without ego. Jackson, for the first time in years, wasn't trying to win, he was trying to learn. Each day, they trained together, sometimes for hours. Jackson was shocked by how much Keanu knew, not just about fighting, but about movement, timing, energy, and mindset. Keanu didn't just teach techniques, he taught patience, focus, and humility. Jackson started posting small clips of their training, nothing flashy, just moments of Keanu correcting his stance or showing how to breathe during a hold. Those clips inspired millions. Fighters from around the world began commenting, saying they too had once laughed at actors, but now they saw Keanu as a true martial artist. In one video, Jackson said, "This man knocked me out, but now he lifts me up every day." That clip made people cry. It wasn't about the fight anymore. It was about friendship, respect, and growth. Soon, reporters started asking for interviews again, but both Keanu and Jackson refused. They didn't want to turn their journey into a show. They wanted it to be real, private, and pure. Keanu told the dojo owner, "We're not doing this for likes, we're doing it for life." Those words were written on the wall of the dojo the next day. Over the next few weeks, Jackson changed completely. His voice became softer. his body language calmer. Even his fans noticed. One of them commented, "It's like Keanu knocked the anger out of him." And maybe, in a way, he did. What shocked people most was how Keanu treated Jackson, not as a student to be controlled, but as a friend to be guided. Every time Jackson made a mistake, Keanu didn't scold him. He showed him how to fix it gently. Every time Jackson got frustrated, Keanu just smiled and said, "It's all part of learning." And Jackson wasn't just training in the dojo. He also started doing volunteer work, visiting children's hospitals with Keanu, reading stories, handing out toys, talking to kids about peace and strength, not the kind that comes from fists, but the kind that comes from the heart. One day, a little boy at the hospital asked Jackson, "Are you the man Keanu punched?" Jackson laughed and nodded. "Yes, I am." The boy asked, "Did it hurt?" Jackson smiled and said, "Only for 28 seconds, but the lesson it gave me will last forever." That answer was shared online and became a quote people used everywhere. It was printed on t-shirts, posters, and even put up in some gyms. 28 seconds of pain, a lifetime of learning. People started to understand that this story wasn't about a fight. It was about what came after, about how one moment can break pride and build something better. Keanu didn't just knock out an MMA champion. He helped rebuild a man who had lost his way, and while the world was watching, something even bigger was about to begin, because Jackson was planning something no one expected. And Keanu? He was about to take the next step in turning this friendship into something that would inspire the world for years to come. The bond between Keanu and Jackson became stronger with every passing day. What started with a knockout had slowly turned into something no one expected. A quiet, respectful friendship built on trust, learning, and personal growth. Jackson was no longer the loud fighter who mocked others for fame. He had changed, and the world noticed. People still talked about the fight, but more and more, they talked about what happened after it. How two men, once on opposite sides, came together with open minds. Keanu didn't just teach Jackson how to fight with control. He taught him how to live with purpose. And now Jackson wanted to give something back, not just to Keanu, but to the world. One evening, after a long training session, Jackson sat beside Keanu on the dojo floor. The room was quiet. Only the sound of the evening breeze came through the open windows. Jackson looked down at his hands, then at Keanu. "You changed my life," he said slowly. "I was angry, lost, full of ego, and now I feel like I'm finally becoming who I should have been years ago." Keanu gave a gentle nod and smiled. "You were always that person, Jackson. You just needed to slow down and listen to yourself." That conversation planted an idea in Jackson's heart. He went home that night and stayed up thinking. He looked at old photos of himself, standing over knocked-out opponents, raising fists in victory. But his face in those photos never showed peace, only pride. He didn't like that version of himself anymore. The next morning, Jackson made a decision. He wanted to create a space where others like him, young fighters full of anger and ego, could learn the same lesson he did, not by being knocked out, but through training, discipline, and guidance. He called Keanu and shared the idea. "I want to open a gym," Jackson said. "But not just a normal gym. I want it to be a place where we teach what you taught me. Not just punching and kicking, but balance, respect, and humility." Keanu didn't answer right away. He closed his eyes, thought deeply, then said, "If we do this, we do it together." And just like that, the idea of a new gym was born, not for champions, not for fame, but for people who needed a second chance, a place where discipline would be taught with kindness, where ego would be replaced with focus, where broken spirits could heal. They found an old building on the edge of the city. The walls were cracked, the floors dusty, but both men saw something more, a future. They worked together to clean it, paint it, and build something beautiful from the inside out. Fans and volunteers showed up to help, inspired by their story. Within weeks, the gym was ready. They named it the Dojo of Stillness, a name Keanu chose himself. When asked why, he simply said, "Because when you're still, you can truly hear yourself." The opening day was quiet. No press, no big banners, just a few students, some curious neighbors, and a simple ceremony. Keanu stood in front of the small crowd, bowed, and said, "This is not a place to become better than others. This is a place to become better than who you were yesterday." People clapped softly, some even wiped away tears. Jackson began teaching the first class, but he didn't shout like he used to. He spoke gently, helping each student understand their own rhythm. He told them his story, not with shame, but with honesty. "I used to think being strong meant hurting others," he said, "but real strength is in controlling yourself." Each day, more people joined, and soon, the gym was filled with students from all backgrounds. Bullied teens, troubled veterans, young men who had lost their way, even women who wanted to learn how to defend themselves and find inner strength. The gym became more than just a training center, it became a family. One day, a reporter asked Keanu why he agreed to build the gym with someone who had once insulted him in public. Keanu smiled softly and replied, "Because growth is beautiful, and everyone deserves the chance to rise after they fall." That quote was shared everywhere, and it reminded people that kindness was stronger than revenge, that lifting someone up was more powerful than knocking them down. The gym quickly became a safe place for healing and growth. People would come in broken and leave smiling. Jackson said it best during an interview. "Keanu didn't just defeat me in 28 seconds. He gave me a new life, and now I want to pass that gift on to others." And he did every single day. But behind all the smiles and training, something bigger was building again. An idea that could take their message far beyond the gym walls, because Keanu had just received a call from someone very important. Someone who wanted to share their journey with the world, through a lens millions could see. What started with a fight was about to become a film, a story, and maybe even a movement. But before that, something unexpected would happen. Something that would test both Keanu and Jackson in a way they never imagined. Weeks passed, and the Dojo of Stillness became a peaceful home for many lost souls. Every day, people walked in with heavy hearts and walked out feeling lighter. Keanu and Jackson taught side by side, sometimes in silence, sometimes with calm. Words that touched even the hardest people. Both men had found something they didn't know they were missing, a purpose bigger than themselves. But just as the peace was settling in, something happened that changed everything again. A well-known movie director came to visit. His name was Richard Lane, and he had directed many award-winning films. He didn't come as a fan. He came with an offer. He had seen the video of the fight, the apology, and the gym's creation, and he said something that surprised both men. "This story needs to be told on the big screen." Keanu didn't answer at first. He was never the kind of man to chase fame. He looked at Jackson, who also stayed silent. Finally, Keanu said, "It's not a story about fighting, it's a story about forgiveness." Richard nodded and replied, "Exactly, and that's why the world needs it right now." Keanu and Jackson talked about it that night, walking quietly through the city streets. Jackson said, "I'm not proud of who I was. I don't want people to remember me for that moment." But Keanu shook his head gently. "They won't remember who you were. They'll remember who you became." In the end, they agreed, but only if they had full control of the story. No drama added, no fake scenes, just the truth, the pain, and the journey from darkness to light. Richard agreed, and soon the project was in motion. News spread quickly, and fans around the world were excited. People loved the idea of a film that wasn't about action, but about healing. Many wrote messages online saying, "This story changed my life already, and the movie hasn't even started." But with attention came pressure. One day, a former rival of Jackson's posted an angry video. His name was Blaze Rivera, another MMA fighter, known for his violent temper and cruel attitude. Blaze mocked the film, laughed at Keanu, and said, "You let that actor fool you, Jackson, you went soft." The internet exploded again. Some fans supported Blaze, others were furious. Jackson was hurt, but he stayed silent. He focused on training, breathing, and teaching. But deep inside, those words stung, not because they were true, but because they reminded him of who he used to be. Keanu noticed the change in Jackson. He saw how the smile faded slightly, how Jackson stayed longer in the gym alone. One evening, Keanu found him sitting by the mat, staring at nothing. He sat beside him, and asked, "What's on your mind?" Jackson sighed deeply. What if they're right? What if I have gone soft? What if people only see me as weak now? Keanu looked at him for a long time, then said, "Soft doesn't mean weak, Jackson. Soft means you care. It means you think. Before you strike, it means you choose peace over pride." Jackson didn't reply, but those words stayed with him. 2 days later, Blaze showed up at the gym unannounced. Cameras followed him. He barged through the doors with a smug smile. "Let's see what your dojo of stillness has to offer," he said. Keanu stood between Blaze and Jackson, calm and firm. "This is not a place for that," he said. Blaze laughed. "Then what is it, a place to cry together?" Jackson stood up, walked forward, and everyone held their breath. They thought he would lose control, but he didn't. He stood face to face with Blaze and said, "You're welcome to stay and train, but if you want to fight, go fight your own shadow." Blaze blinked. Surprised by the calm reply the cameras caught every second. Jackson didn't flinch, didn't shout, he simply turned and walked away, leaving Blaze speechless. That moment was shared even more than the fight had been. People saw a different kind of power, the kind that came from control, strength, and growth. Jackson didn't need to win a fight to prove anything anymore. He had already won something bigger, his own peace. Later that week, Richard visited again, holding a small box. "This just arrived," he said with a smile. It was from the Children's Hospital Foundation. Inside was a thank you plaque, with a message that made both men silent for a moment. It read, "Because of you, over $3 million were raised for children in need. Thank you for fighting for kindness." Keanu held the plaque gently. Jackson looked at it, eyes soft. "We didn't just start a gym, did we?" he whispered. "No," Keanu said. "We started something real." But their journey wasn't finished yet. The movie project was growing. The world was watching, and something even more emotional was waiting around the corner. Because the next chapter wouldn't take place in the gym or the dojo. It would take them to a place where Keanu had once made a quiet promise. And now, it was time to keep it. A month passed since the last moment with Blaze Rivera, and the gym had returned to its peaceful rhythm. People came, trained, learned, and left with lighter hearts. Keanu and Jackson were not just teachers anymore. They had become something more to the community. Examples of calm strength and quiet. Purpose. The film project was moving forward, but something else was calling Keanu's heart. One quiet evening, as the sun set behind the gym's windows, Keanu stood alone in the corner, looking at an old photo he had taken out from his wallet. It showed a young girl with a bright smile, sitting on a hospital bed. Her name was Lily. She had been one of the children Keanu met during a hospital visit years ago. Back when he had just started training for his action films, Lily had been full of life. Despite her illness, she used to tell Keanu stories. Sometimes she acted out little scenes and said, "One day, you'll be in my movie, Mr. Keanu." Her laughter always stayed with him, but her life was short. She passed away just weeks after they met, and before she died, she gave Keanu a drawing, a picture of him standing beside a dojo with the words "Kind Warrior" written above it. Keanu kept that drawing in his home all these years. Now, with the gym built and the story turning into a film, Keanu felt it was time to visit the hospital again, to thank the people who took care of Lily and to show them that her dream lived on. He asked Jackson to come with him, and without hesitation, Jackson said yes. They arrived at the Children's Hospital on a Saturday morning. The staff were surprised but deeply touched. Keanu didn't ask for cameras, didn't make speeches. He just walked room to room, meeting kids, telling jokes and listening to their stories. Jackson followed, quietly handing out small toys, helping parents carry food trays, sitting down with boys and girls who had no visitors that day. One little boy grabbed Jackson's hand and asked, "Are you a fighter?" Jackson smiled gently and said, "I used to be. Now I just help people become strong inside." The boy didn't fully understand, but he smiled back, and that was enough. In one room, a young girl named Mia was sitting alone, watching a video. On her tablet, she was watching the moment Keanu helped Jackson up after the 28-second knockout. Keanu sat beside her and asked, "You like that video?" She nodded. It's cool. He didn't get mad even after he got hit. Jackson laughed. From the doorway. I was the one who got hit. Mia's eyes widened. You're the guy who fell asleep in 28 seconds? Everyone in the room laughed and Jackson gave a shy nod. That's me, the nap champion. The hospital visit turned into something more, not just for the kids but for Keanu and Jackson too. They remembered why they had started this journey. In the first place, not to fight, not for fame, but to make a difference, to lift people up. Before leaving, Keanu met with Lily's old nurse. She still worked there, and when Keanu showed her the drawing Lily had made, her eyes filled with tears. She always believed you were more than an actor, the nurse said softly. She believed you were a guardian. Keanu didn't speak, he just nodded and held the drawing close to his heart. Later that night, Jackson sat outside the hospital looking up at the stars. Keanu joined him and sat quietly for a while. Then Jackson said, I used to think strength came from the fight, from the win. But I think real strength is what you showed today, with that girl, with that drawing. Keanu looked at him and said, We don't choose who we fight sometimes, but we can always choose who we fight for. Those words stayed with Jackson long after they left the hospital. And something changed in him again. He started visiting the hospital once a week on his own. Not as a fighter, but as a friend. Sometimes he read books. Other times he just listened. And every time he left, he felt lighter, more alive. The hospital staff started calling him Coach Jack, and the children adored him. Meanwhile, the film was now in production, but not like a normal film. Keanu and Jackson made sure it stayed honest. They chose unknown actors, simple scenes, and real messages. No big fights, just real emotion, real growth, and real kindness. They even used the real drawing from Lily in one of the final scenes. The director, Richard Lane, said, This isn't a movie, it's a mirror. It shows who we could be if we stop trying to win and start trying to understand. As the film neared completion, Keanu received an invitation from an international peace foundation. They had heard the story, watched the clips, followed the journey, and wanted to honor both him and Jackson at a special event. Keanu didn't care for awards, and Jackson hated the spotlight, but this time they both agreed. Because the event wasn't just about them, it was about Lily, about the kids, about everyone who ever needed hope and found it in the unlikeliest place. But what they didn't know was that something powerful was waiting for them at that event. Something that would take the story full circle. Something that would remind the whole world what it truly means to fight with kindness. The invitation to the International Peace Foundation event arrived with golden edges and soft words. It was not a loud ceremony with red carpets and flashing lights. It was something quieter, more powerful. It honored people who spread peace, changed lives and inspired others, not with violence but with kindness. Keanu and Jackson flew together to Geneva, Switzerland, where the event was held, both dressed in simple black suits. They didn't speak much during the flight, but their silence was peaceful, full of understanding. They were not going to collect trophies. They were going to stand for something bigger. The event was held in a large glass hall, filled with people from around the world, teachers, doctors, peacekeepers, and a few quiet heroes who had changed lives in small but powerful ways. When Keanu and Jackson entered, the room filled with soft applause, not the kind of applause for celebrities, but for men who had done something that mattered. The host welcomed them kindly and said, Tonight, we honor not a knockout, but a wake-up call that touched the hearts of millions. Videos played on large screens, showing clips from the 28-second fight, Jackson's apology, the hospital visits, the training at the dojo of stillness, and the children smiling in the hallways. As the lights dimmed, a soft voice echoed through the room. Real warriors fight for peace. Everyone turned to the stage, and to Keanu's surprise, a young girl walked out holding something in her hands. It was Lily's drawing, the same one she gave to Keanu years ago, but this was a larger version. Framed, glowing under the lights, Keanu stood still, his eyes fixed on the drawing. The girl introduced herself. My name is Sarah. I'm Lily's little sister. Gasps were heard across the room. Keanu slowly walked toward her, his heart pounding. He didn't know Lily had a sister. No one had told him before. Sarah continued, her voice shaking but brave. My sister always said Mr. Keanu was not just an actor. He was a kind warrior. When she passed, she told me to keep her dream alive, and now I see it came true. Keanu knelt down in front of her and whispered, "Thank you for keeping her. Spirit with us." He gently took the framed drawing, held it to his chest, and stood there for a long moment. The whole room stood with him. No one said a word because in that silence they all understood the power of one small act of kindness, one moment of respect, one promise kept. Then it was Jackson's turn to speak. He walked to the stage, nervous but calm. He looked around the hall and said, "I was known for knocking people out, for showing power in the ring, but the strongest thing I ever did was admit I was wrong and accept a hand that helped me back up." He looked at Keanu and added, "He didn't just change me, he saved me." Applause filled the room again, and this time Jackson didn't feel shame. He felt proud, not for being a fighter, but for becoming a better man. That night, both Keanu and Jackson were given a Peace Through Action medal, one of the highest honors from the foundation. They accepted it with grace, but Keanu whispered something to the host. "Please donate mine to the hospital fund. They need it more than I do." Later, as they walked back to their hotel, Jackson asked, "Did you expect that? Lily's sister showing up?" Keanu shook his head slowly. "No, but maybe Lily did." They both smiled quietly, the stars above them shining over the peaceful city. The next morning, the world woke up to headlines, not about violence, not about scandal, but about peace, kindness, and two men who taught the world that changing one person's heart can change everything. Articles were written with titles like "The Knockout That Healed a Nation" and "Keanu's Quiet Mission." The story reached schools, youth centers, prisons, and even military bases. People shared it not for entertainment, but as an example of how humans could be better, stronger, and more peaceful because of one choice: to not strike back in anger, but to lift someone up in kindness. One clip from the event went viral again. The moment Sarah gave Keanu the drawing, people across the world wrote, "I cried watching this. This is what humanity looks like. Thank you, Keanu." And, "Thank you, Jackson." The foundation reported that donations to children's hospitals doubled that week, inspired by their story. Back in their city, the Dojo of Stillness now had a line outside every morning. People wanted to train, yes, but more than that, they wanted to feel the peace they saw in those two men. Some came just to sit and breathe, others to talk, and a few simply to say, "Thank you." One evening, a young man named Marco came to the gym. He had been in trouble before, fights, jail, anger, but he had watched the video online and said, "If Jackson could change, maybe I can too." Keanu and Jackson welcomed him with open arms, and just like that, another life started to shift. What began with a loud challenge and a knockout punch had become a movement, not just about fighting, but about choosing the better path, the harder path, the kinder path. And as Jackson looked around the dojo, now full of peace and purpose, he smiled and said softly, "We're just getting started." Months passed after the Peace Foundation event, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The Dojo of Stillness grew into more than a gym. It became a place of healing, not just for fighters, but for anyone carrying heavy burdens. People came from across the country just to sit, train, or learn from the quiet wisdom that Keanu and Jackson shared every day. The film about their journey was finally completed. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't filled with loud fight scenes. Instead, it was simple, emotional, and true. It showed the real story. From Jackson's challenge and the 28-second knockout to his apology, to the building of the dojo, and finally to the hospital visits and the Peace Award. The last scene ended with Lily's drawing, glowing softly on the screen with the words "Kind Warrior" written in a child's hand. When the movie premiered, something strange happened. People didn't clap right away. They sat in silence for a moment, some with tears in their eyes, and then the applause began. Slow and soft at first, but soon rising into thunder. The audience wasn't just entertained. They were moved. Many walked out quietly, thinking about their own lives, about their own pride, about the people they had hurt or ignored. Keanu never cared about reviews, but critics called it one of the most powerful films of the year, not because of its budget, but because of its honesty. They wrote lines like, "This is not a movie about fighting. This is a movie about healing. The film went on to win awards, but more importantly, it inspired countless people to change. One letter arrived at the dojo weeks after the release. It was from a soldier. Overseas, he wrote, "I saw your film, and for the first time, I realized I don't have to fight everything inside me. I can choose peace too." Another message came from a young woman who had been bullied. She said, "I wanted revenge, but after watching you, I chose forgiveness, and I feel free for the first time." Jackson read these messages every night, sometimes with tears in his eyes. He realized that the fight he thought had ended his career was actually the moment that began his real life. He wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a guide, a teacher, a brother to those who needed one. One evening, as the dojo emptied and the last students left, Jackson sat on the mat with Keanu. The lights dim, the sound of the city outside faint. Jackson asked softly, "Do you ever think about that night? The fight?" Keanu smiled gently and said, "Not as a fight, I think of it as a beginning." Jackson nodded. "Yeah, me too. 28 seconds ended my pride, but it gave me peace." They both sat in silence, breathing slowly, like they often taught. Their students outside the windows, the city lights shimmered like stars, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world was quiet, listening. But the world wasn't done with them yet. Months later, they were invited to speak at schools, youth centers, and even prisons. They didn't give long speeches, they just shared their story. Simple and honest, Keanu would always say, "It's not about how fast you can strike, it's about how fast you can forgive." And Jackson would add, "Real strength is lifting someone up even when you have every reason to knock them down." People listened not because they were famous, but because they were real. The phrase 28 seconds became a symbol, written on t-shirts, painted on walls, used as hashtags around the world. But it no longer meant a knockout, it meant a lesson. That in less than half a minute, life can change, pride can fall, and kindness can rise. Years later, when people looked back, they didn't just remember the fight. They remembered what came after: the gym, the hospital visits, the peace award, the movie, the children who smiled, the lives that changed, and the quiet message that spread across the world. Keanu often said in interviews, "I didn't win that night, we both did." And Jackson would laugh and reply, "Yeah, I just took the nap." But behind the jokes, everyone knew the truth. They had both gained something greater than any championship. They had gained peace. And so, the story that began with arrogance, pride, and a public challenge ended with something no one expected: a friendship, a movement, and a reminder that even in a world full of noise, a moment of kindness can echo forever. As the dojo lights dimmed on another night, Keanu placed Lily's drawing on the wall, right above the mats, so that every student who walked in could see it. He looked at Jackson and said, "She was right, you know, we are all kind warriors." Jackson nodded, smiled, and whispered, "And sometimes all it takes is 28 seconds to find out."